The infinite mana paradox. Paradox. If mana can be generated from nothing, how can it ever run out? Mana, often depicted as the core energy source behind magic in many fantasy systems, is typically treated as a finite resource that must be carefully managed. The idea of infinite mana, however, presents a fundamental paradox. If mana can be drawn from nothing and generated endlessly, how can it ever be depleted? What prevents an endless flow of magical energy from corrupting the balance and stability of the world? In most fantasy worlds, the notion of finite resources is integral to the story structure. Characters or players must carefully conserve their resources, making decisions about when to expend magical power and when to hold back. These moments of decision making are essential for creating tension, especially in high stakes situations. If mana were infinite, however, this strategic decision making would be rendered meaningless. Characters could simply cast spells without concern for their magical reserves, making magic both too easy and too overwhelming. A world where mana is infinite raises additional problems beyond the immediate gameplay. In such a world, magic could become so ubiquitous that it loses its significance. Magic in fantasy worlds often serves as a tool to amplify the extraordinary, to create wonder, and to represent a force greater than the ordinary world. When magic is no longer limited, it loses its power to awe or surprise. Instead of being a rare and powerful resource, magic becomes a mundane tool, just another resource at the disposal of anyone who can wield it. Moreover, the infinite mana paradox would fundamentally alter the power dynamics in a world. If every individual has access to unlimited magical power, the traditional concept of balance in power would collapse. There would be no more clear distinction between powerful and weak magic users. Characters who once had to rely on careful spell management would no longer face those challenges. This creates a situation where even the most critical conflicts could be resolved trivially, and the tension that drives a story would dissipate. Ultimately, an infinite mana system might reduce the richness of the magical system, rendering it a one dimensional aspect of the world. Additionally, this paradox can have a deeper philosophical implication. In a world where energy and resources can be endlessly generated, what does it mean to work for something? Magic would no longer require mastery, discipline, or expertise. It would simply be a tool to be used. This creates a world where challenges are eliminated and the concept of personal growth or accomplishment is undermined. Magic would become a shortcut rather than a means of achieving greatness or overcoming obstacles. The infinite mana paradox forces us to question the very structure of magical systems in fantasy worlds. By eliminating the need for resource management, it risks reducing the complexity of these systems. Magic, instead of being a force to be reckoned with, becomes just another part of the everyday experience. This paradox challenges creators to rethink the fundamental nature of magic itself and how it is represented in stories. The healing paradox. Paradox. If healing magic can instantly restore a person to perfect health, does suffering and death still have meaning? Healing magic is one of the most widely used tropes in fantasy worlds, often depicted as a way to instantly restore health or even bring characters back from the dead. On the surface, this ability seems like a great boon for characters, offering them a second chance and making them nearly invincible. However, this ability also creates a paradox that challenges the very concept of suffering, mortality, and the meaning of struggle within a narrative. In a world where magic can heal injuries instantly, what is the purpose of suffering? Pain and injury are fundamental aspects of the human experience, both in real life and in fiction. They act as a catalyst for character development and growth. When a character faces an injury or near death experience, it forces them to reflect on their vulnerabilities, their purpose, and their place in the world. But in a world where healing magic is available at a moment's notice, these emotional and psychological struggles lose their depth. Suffering in fiction often has a transformative effect. Characters who endure hardship, pain, or loss undergo personal growth. They learn about themselves, form deeper relationships with others, and gain empathy or wisdom. However, if healing magic can immediately erase the consequences of injury or death, this entire process of growth is undermined. The character may no longer need to reflect on their mortality or vulnerability because these things can be healed in an instant. The stakes of conflict and danger are reduced, making it harder for readers or players to emotionally connect with the characters. Furthermore, healing magic diminishes the significance of death. Death, in many stories, represents the ultimate loss and is often the greatest consequence a character can face. It forces others to confront the transient nature of life. In a world with powerful healing magic, however, death becomes less permanent, less meaningful. If death can be reversed at will, it no longer has the same weight. It ceases to be an irreversible loss and becomes just another temporary setback. Moreover, this paradox has profound implications on the ethical aspects of the magical system. If healing magic is so powerful, who decides when and how it should be used? Does it become a form of control? Is there a limit to how much healing is acceptable, or can magic be used to maintain eternal life, essentially eliminating the concept of mortality? These questions bring up deep ethical issues. Healing magic may allow for better survival, but it also raises the question of whether it's ethically right to erase the natural processes of life and death. Finally, this paradox suggests a limitation of healing magic. In some narratives, the very power to heal becomes corrupted or weaponized, where those who control such magic gain a disproportionate amount of power. The ethical implications of using this power could potentially lead to manipulation, exploitation, or the destruction of balance in society. The possibility of creating an immortal class of individuals who can continually heal themselves presents a grave political danger, leading to social inequality and instability. The immortality paradox. If someone becomes immortal, do they lose their sense of meaning and purpose? Immortality is often portrayed as a desirable goal in many fantasy worlds. Elusive as it may be, immortality represents the ultimate escape from death and a chance for endless experiences and knowledge. However, immortality comes with its own set of challenges, raising the question: if someone becomes immortal, do they lose their sense of meaning and purpose in life? One of the paradoxes of immortality is the potential for existential ennui. In many stories, immortality is presented as a gift, allowing individuals to experience the world forever. But over time, this endless span of existence can become increasingly monotonous. Without the limitations of time, the urgency that drives people to achieve goals, make decisions, or pursue purpose disappears. Characters might find themselves wandering aimlessly through the centuries, unable to find true meaning in their existence. The fear of death often drives people to act with purpose, whether it's to create something lasting, love deeply, or fight for a cause. Without the constraint of time, those motivations may dissipate. Moreover, immortality could result in a loss of emotional connection. As individuals live for millennia, they may witness the deaths of loved ones, friends, and even entire generations. Over time, this could lead to detachment, as the immortal being would have to continually watch the world around them change while they remain the same. The emotional weight of such experiences could lead to a form of emotional numbness or apathy. Relationships may become shallow because the immortal being no longer has a sense of urgency to form lasting bonds, knowing they will outlive everyone else. This paradox also touches upon the theme of personal growth. In many narratives, death represents change, the culmination of a life's journey, and the ultimate consequence. If immortality removes the finality of death, does the character ever truly grow? Without the finality of their life's journey, they may struggle to find meaning in their actions or experiences. Without death as a motivator, immortality might result in emotional and intellectual stagnation. The absolute power paradox. If one can possess absolute power, is there any real challenge or purpose left? The notion of absolute power is frequently explored in fantasy and fiction. The idea that someone could wield unlimited magical power, capable of altering the very fabric of reality itself, seems like the ultimate achievement for any character. However, this raises a significant paradox. If someone possesses absolute power, what challenge remains for them? Can a character with limitless magical abilities ever experience meaningful conflict or growth? The core issue lies in the concept of struggle and challenge. In most stories, conflict is the driving force that motivates characters to evolve. Whether the struggle is internal, such as dealing with self-doubt or moral dilemmas, or external, such as defeating a formidable foe or overcoming an oppressive system, challenges force characters to adapt, grow, and change. But with absolute power, the concept of conflict is rendered moot. If a character can achieve anything they desire without limit, there are no obstacles to overcome. This takes away the very essence of storytelling, where challenges create stakes, decisions, and growth. Moreover, absolute power could lead to a sense of purposelessness. Characters with immense power may struggle to find meaning or purpose in their actions. With no real threat or consequence, any action they take becomes trivial or inconsequential. The absence of limits or boundaries means there is no need for strategy, planning, or risk. If everything is achievable with a simple use of magic, the journey becomes irrelevant. The hero's journey, in particular, loses its significance as the protagonist no longer faces obstacles or hardships that force them to evolve. Additionally, absolute power introduces a potential moral dilemma. With such power comes the temptation to misuse it, and this could corrupt the character. While many stories explore the idea of someone becoming consumed by power, the paradox of absolute power asks, can someone with infinite power still have a meaningful existence without losing their sense of ethics? Is it possible to wield absolute power without succumbing to hubris, tyranny, or apathy? The lack of challenge and the inevitability of unchecked power could render such a character hollow, unable to find fulfillment or meaningful relationships with others. The paradox of transformation. If magic can completely change something into another form, what defines the original identity of that thing? The ability to transform objects, creatures, or even people is a powerful tool in many magical systems. This transformation often involves changing one thing into something entirely different, such as turning a rock into gold or a human into a bird. However, this process raises a paradox. If magic can completely alter the form of something, what defines its original identity? Is the transformed object still the same thing in essence, or has it become something entirely new? This paradox challenges the very concept of identity. In the real world, identity is often tied to a person or object's physical form and characteristics. A rock is a rock because it has certain properties: its shape, texture, weight, and composition. When it is transformed into gold, does it lose its identity as a rock? Or does it retain a part of its original essence? If a person is transformed into an animal, is the person still the same individual, or are they entirely someone or something else? The transformation paradox questions whether true change is even possible. In many magical worlds, transformation magic involves more than just altering physical characteristics. It often changes the nature of the object or being. For example, when a human turns into a bird, they may not just gain feathers and wings, they may also experience a shift in consciousness or perspective. But at what point do these changes alter their fundamental identity? Can someone be the same person if their body and mind are transformed? This paradox also invites exploration of the consequences of transformation. If magic allows for complete and total change, it raises ethical and philosophical questions. Is it right to alter someone's nature or identity? What does it mean to change something into something else? And who has the right to make that decision? Can a transformed person ever truly return to their original form? Or are they forever changed, both physically and mentally? The time travel paradox. If one can travel back in time and change events, does free will still exist? Time travel is a common trope in fantasy and science fiction. The ability to move through time, altering past events, or seeing future ones opens up fascinating possibilities. However, it also presents a paradox. If characters can change past events, how does this affect the concept of free will? If actions in the past can be altered with magical intervention, does that imply that the future is predetermined or that individual choices no longer matter? This paradox brings up questions of fate and free will. In a world where time travel is possible, every action taken in the past could potentially alter the course of history. However, if one is aware of the future or has the ability to change past events, how much control do characters truly have over their decisions? Can they truly exercise free will if they are constantly shaping and reshaping their own timeline? The paradox also touches on the notion of responsibility. If time travel allows characters to make decisions in the past that affect the future, do they bear responsibility for those changes? Can they foresee the consequences of their actions, or are they bound to repeat the same mistakes? The existence of time travel raises difficult moral questions. Is it ethical to change past events for personal gain or for the greater good, knowing that doing so could alter countless lives and outcomes? The paradox of truth and illusion. If a spell reveals the truth, it must strip away deception. But if an illusion hides the truth, it must resist truth magic. The relationship between truth and illusion is a common theme in fantasy systems, especially when magic is involved. Many magical systems feature spells that can reveal the truth, and others that create illusions to deceive. The paradox arises when these two forces come into direct conflict. If truth magic strips away deception, what happens when an illusion is cast to hide the truth? How can the illusion persist if truth magic exposes it? This paradox suggests that truth and illusion cannot easily coexist. If truth magic exists to reveal hidden information, it has the power to break down illusions and expose them for what they truly are. However, if magic creates an illusion to obscure the truth, it is in direct opposition to truth spells. The paradox is a philosophical one. Does magic have the power to establish a single, unassailable truth, or does illusion have equal standing in creating alternate realities? The implications of this paradox are vast. It suggests that, in worlds where both truth and illusion magic exist, the very nature of reality becomes fluid. If illusions can be created to hide the truth, and truth magic can strip away deception, then what is real in such a world? Is truth subjective, or is it absolute? Can illusionary worlds be as real as the world perceived through truth? Or does magic have the power to distinguish between them? The paradox of absolute power. The more we learn, the less we understand. Knowledge is often seen as the path to enlightenment. The more we know, the more powerful, wise, and fulfilled we become. This idea is ingrained in much of human culture, as learning is considered the key to understanding ourselves, the universe, and everything in it. In fact, knowledge is often associated with freedom. Freedom from ignorance, freedom from misunderstanding, and freedom to make informed choices. However, there exists a paradox within this very pursuit of knowledge. The more we learn, the less we understand. At first glance, this idea seems counterintuitive. Surely, the more we know, the clearer our understanding of the world becomes. But as we delve deeper into any subject, we quickly realize that knowledge only opens up new realms of complexity. For example, a student studying physics may begin by learning basic concepts like gravity and motion. However, as they continue their studies, they encounter more complicated theories, such as quantum mechanics and relativity. The more they learn, the more they realize how little they truly understand. What seems simple at first becomes ever more complex, and with each new discovery, the questions multiply. This paradox extends beyond academic pursuits into all aspects of life. Take the realm of human relationships, for example. The more we learn about others, about their motivations, fears, desires, and struggles, the more we realize how little we truly understand them. Human beings are infinitely complex, and no matter how much we try to understand them, there will always be aspects of their nature that remain elusive. The more we dig into someone's past or personality, the more we discover layers and intricacies that defy explanation. What we thought we understood at the surface turns out to be just the beginning of an ocean of complexity. Moreover, the pursuit of knowledge often reveals the limits of human understanding. Science, for example, has made remarkable strides in exploring the cosmos, delving into the fundamental building blocks of matter, and even uncovering the deepest mysteries of life itself. Yet, with each breakthrough, we are faced with new questions. The discovery of dark matter and dark energy has opened up vast areas of inquiry that we still do not fully comprehend. In the realm of philosophy, the more we attempt to understand the nature of consciousness or the meaning of existence, the more paradoxes and contradictions emerge. Every answer seems to lead to new questions, and this endless cycle of inquiry leaves us with a deep sense of ambiguity. This paradox of knowledge is especially pronounced in the context of human experience. The more we learn about the world, the more we realize how much of it remains beyond our grasp. The vastness of the unknown becomes more apparent the more we know. Every new discovery brings us face to face with the limits of our understanding. In a sense, our expanding knowledge only serves to remind us of how little we truly understand about the fundamental nature of reality. Furthermore, the pursuit of knowledge can sometimes lead to a sense of existential doubt. As we learn more about the world, we are often confronted with the futility of trying to comprehend the universe in its entirety. The questions of why are we here and what is the meaning of life persist despite all our accumulated wisdom. The more we search for answers, the more we realize that the ultimate questions may never be fully answerable. This recognition can lead to a sense of existential unease, where the very pursuit of knowledge seems to undermine our ability to find true peace of mind. One of the most profound aspects of this paradox is the realization that knowledge often comes with a price. The more we learn, the more we become aware of the vastness of what we do not know. This awareness can create a sense of humility, but it can also lead to frustration. The more we know, the more we understand just how limited our understanding is. This can lead to feelings of inadequacy and disillusionment. We may find ourselves questioning whether the pursuit of knowledge is worth the endless cycle of discovery and uncertainty. In conclusion, the paradox of knowledge reveals a fundamental truth about the human condition. The pursuit of understanding is never truly completed. As we strive to learn more, we are confronted with the infinite complexity of the world around us. The more we know, the more we realize how much there is still to uncover, and the more we understand the limits of our comprehension. Rather than bringing us closer to absolute understanding, knowledge often deepens our awareness of the vastness of the unknown. Ultimately, this paradox reminds us that the quest for knowledge is an endless journey, where each discovery is merely a stepping stone on the road to greater uncertainty. The more we learn, the less we seem to understand. The paradox of free will. Paradox. If we have true free will, is our destiny still determined by the choices we make? The concept of free will has been at the heart of philosophical debates for centuries. On one hand, it seems intuitive. We make decisions, we choose our actions, and we bear the consequences of those choices. We believe that we are in control of our own destinies, that our lives unfold according to our personal decisions. Free will, in this sense, gives us agency, the power to shape our lives as we see fit. But this belief leads to a fascinating paradox. If our actions are truly the result of free will, does that mean our destiny is still shaped by the choices we make? Or is everything already predetermined? At first glance, the idea of free will appears simple. If I choose to go left instead of right, my life will follow a different path, and I am the one who decides that direction. The notion of free will grants us control over our futures, offering a sense of empowerment. However, this seemingly clear-cut idea becomes more complex when we begin to ask whether our choices are entirely our own or whether they are influenced by factors beyond our control. The first challenge to the concept of free will comes from the question of determinism, the idea that every event, including human actions, is determined by prior causes. According to this view, the universe operates according to fixed laws, and every choice we make is influenced by past events, environmental factors, genetics, and societal pressures. If everything is determined by these factors, then it would seem that we don't have true free will. Our decisions are simply the result of these pre-existing conditions, and therefore, our sense of choice may be an illusion. Consider a person's decision to pursue a particular career. Is this choice really free? Or is it shaped by the person's upbringing, their education, their socioeconomic status, and even the expectations of those around them? We often believe that we are making decisions based on personal desires and ambitions, but how much of that desire is influenced by the world in which we live? If our choices are deeply rooted in the conditions that preceded them, can we say that we have free will at all? On the other hand, if we do have true free will, if we are truly capable of making choices independent of external factors, then this would imply that we are capable of acting in ways that are completely unpredictable and unaccountable. We would have the power to defy any causal influences, to make choices that are entirely independent of the world around us. But this raises the question, if we can truly act independently of all influences, would we still be able to create a coherent and meaningful narrative of our lives? This leads us to another paradox. If free will allows us to choose anything we wish, regardless of circumstance, then the concept of destiny itself seems to lose its meaning. Destiny often implies that there is a purpose, a plan, or a predetermined outcome to our lives. But if we have true free will, can our future really be predetermined? How can our destiny be meaningful if we are free to change course at any moment? In this sense, free will might render the concept of destiny useless because our choices constantly reshape the path ahead, and there is no fixed endpoint. However, if we accept that free will exists, but that it is limited by external factors, we encounter a different paradox. If the universe is shaped by both determinism and free will, then are our choices truly free at all? If our choices are influenced by factors we cannot control, then are we truly acting of our own volition? Or are we simply acting in response to the world around us? This blend of determinism and free will suggests that we may have some measure of control over our lives, but it is never absolute. Our choices are shaped by a multitude of factors, but we still retain some agency to influence our future. The paradox of happiness. Paradox. The more we pursue happiness, the more it seems to elude us. Happiness is often seen as the ultimate goal of life, something that everyone strives for in various ways. Whether it's the pursuit of wealth, love, career success, or personal fulfillment, most people believe that achieving happiness is the highest form of accomplishment. Yet, the paradox of happiness suggests that the more we chase after it, the more it seems to slip through our fingers. Despite our best efforts, we often find that happiness is elusive and fleeting, sometimes even appearing to recede as we approach it. On the surface, the pursuit of happiness seems like a straightforward goal. We seek what makes us happy, whether it's a new job, a relationship, or an experience. Society encourages this pursuit by presenting us with the idea that happiness is attainable, especially through material success or external validation. Advertisements and media often portray happiness as the result of obtaining something, a new car, a perfect home, or the perfect partner. We're told that happiness is a destination, a place we can reach once we've achieved certain milestones. However, the paradox arises when we consider how often happiness seems to be just out of reach. As people work toward their goals, they often find that once they achieve them, they don't experience the lasting joy they expected. A person who works hard to buy their dream house might find that once they've moved in, the happiness they anticipated begins to fade. Or after achieving a career milestone, they might still feel unfulfilled and begin striving for the next big achievement, believing that happiness is still waiting just beyond their reach. One of the reasons happiness seems so elusive is that it is often tied to external circumstances that are beyond our control. While we may believe that happiness comes from achieving specific goals, these external markers are only temporary sources of joy. A new job may bring excitement, but eventually, the thrill wears off, and the individual starts looking for something else to bring satisfaction. In fact, research in positive psychology suggests that happiness derived from external sources, such as money, success, or material possessions, tends to be fleeting and does not lead to long-term fulfillment. Moreover, the pursuit of happiness can sometimes create a sense of dissatisfaction in and of itself. People often believe that if they work hard enough or accumulate enough wealth or accomplishments, they will eventually be happy. Yet, this mindset can lead to perpetual dissatisfaction. The more we focus on obtaining happiness, the more we may become frustrated by the fact that it never seems to last. This can create a cycle where we chase happiness only to find that it remains just out of reach, prompting us to work even harder, only to feel the same emptiness once we've achieved our goal. Interestingly, studies have also shown that the pursuit of happiness itself may be counterproductive. People who focus too much on trying to be happy can end up feeling more miserable. In trying to achieve happiness, they set up unrealistic expectations for themselves, believing that they should always be happy or content. This pressure to constantly be in a state of happiness can lead to feelings of guilt or inadequacy when they inevitably experience negative emotions, such as sadness, frustration, or stress. It is this very focus on happiness that can result in unhappiness, as it becomes a goal that is always just beyond their reach. Another factor that contributes to the paradox is the concept of hedonic adaptation. This psychological phenomenon suggests that people quickly adapt to positive changes in their lives, such as acquiring new possessions or reaching significant achievements. In essence, the joy that comes from these things diminishes over time as they become a normal part of life. A person who purchases a new car might feel elated at first, but after a few months, the novelty wears off, and the car becomes just another part of their routine. This pattern of adaptation means that happiness derived from external circumstances is temporary, and the individual finds themselves seeking new sources of joy to replace the old ones. Furthermore, true happiness often arises from within rather than from external circumstances. Many philosophies and spiritual traditions emphasize the importance of inner peace, mindfulness, and self-contentment as the key to lasting happiness. These approaches suggest that happiness is not something that can be chased or obtained through external achievements, but something that comes from a deeper sense of acceptance and understanding. Happiness in this context is not a goal to be pursued, but a state of being that emerges when we learn to live in the present moment and embrace who we are. The paradox of happiness is further compounded by the fact that the more we seek it, the paradox of choice paradox. The more choices we have, the less satisfied we become with our decisions. In today's world, we are constantly told that more choice equals more freedom and happiness. Whether it's selecting a meal from an extensive menu, choosing between countless brands of smartphones, or deciding on career paths, we are often led to believe that having numerous options leads to greater satisfaction. However, The paradox of choice challenges this notion. The more options we have, the less likely we are to be happy with our final decision. In fact, too many choices can lead to confusion, stress, and regret. The paradox begins with the assumption that more choices would allow us to make the best possible decision. When given a wide range of options, we expect that we can carefully weigh the pros and cons and select the one that best fits our needs or desires. This idea is rooted in the belief that freedom of choice empowers us to find the perfect solution, one that perfectly aligns with our preferences and goals. In theory, more choice leads to greater satisfaction because we can select the option that suits us best. However, when we are presented with an overwhelming number of choices, the situation becomes more complicated. As we consider each option, the process of decision making becomes increasingly difficult and stressful. Instead of feeling empowered by the variety of options, we become paralyzed by the fear of making the wrong choice. The greater the number of options, the harder it is to determine which is the right one. This sense of overwhelm can lead to decision fatigue, where we are too mentally exhausted to make any choice at all, or worse, make a choice that we later regret. Moreover, the paradox of choice highlights that even when we do make a decision, we may feel less satisfied with it. The abundance of options often leads us to wonder whether we could have made a better choice. In a world with infinite possibilities, it's easy to imagine that another option would have been more fulfilling or rewarding. This can lead to what psychologists call post-decision regret, where the satisfaction of making a choice is quickly overshadowed by the nagging thought that perhaps we missed out on something better. Additionally, the paradox of choice is compounded by the phenomenon of self-blame. When we have many options and yet make a choice that doesn't lead to the expected outcome, we tend to blame ourselves more. We might think, with all these options, why couldn't I make the right decision? This sense of personal failure can diminish the joy of our decisions, creating a cycle of dissatisfaction and frustration. Research in psychology, particularly by Barry Schwartz in his book The Paradox of Choice, has shown that fewer choices tend to lead to greater satisfaction. When we are faced with only a few options, we are more likely to make a decision quickly and confidently. The limited options make the decision process easier, and we are more likely to feel content with the outcome, even if it's not perfect. The burden of comparing numerous possibilities is lifted, and we can focus on enjoying the decision we've made rather than dwelling on the ones we didn't choose. In conclusion, the paradox of choice reveals an interesting contradiction. More options do not necessarily lead to greater happiness or satisfaction. Instead, an excess of choice can lead to stress, dissatisfaction, and regret. By limiting the number of choices available, we may actually experience more contentment and fulfillment. The key to happiness, it seems, is not in having endless possibilities, but in being able to make a decision and move forward with confidence and ease. The paradox of control paradox. The more we try to control our lives, the more uncontrollable they become. In modern society, we are often taught that success and happiness are linked to the ability to control various aspects of our lives. Whether it's our career, relationships, finances, or personal habits, the pursuit of control is often seen as a key to achieving stability and security. Yet paradoxically, the more we strive for control, the more chaotic and unpredictable our lives can become. At first glance, the desire for control seems to be a logical and beneficial pursuit. Having control over our circumstances allows us to plan our future, avoid negative outcomes, and mitigate risks. If we control our environment, we can theoretically eliminate uncertainty and create a predictable, safe space in which we can thrive. This belief is especially prevalent in professional and personal settings, where individuals strive to make detailed plans, manage their time meticulously, and micromanage aspects of their lives to ensure optimal outcomes. However, when we attempt to control every aspect of our existence, we often find that we are left feeling anxious, overwhelmed, and frustrated. The paradox lies in the fact that life is inherently unpredictable and full of variables beyond our control. No matter how much we try to plan and strategize, there will always be unexpected events, whether it's a sudden illness, a job loss, or an unforeseen personal crisis that disrupt our carefully laid plans. In trying to control everything, we inadvertently create stress and anxiety by focusing on factors that are ultimately beyond our reach. Moreover, the more we attempt to micromanage our lives, the more we may end up neglecting important aspects of our existence. When we focus too much on controlling the details, such as making sure every task is done perfectly or ensuring that every interaction is handled precisely, we risk losing sight of the bigger picture. We may become so consumed with trying to maintain order and predictability that we miss out on the spontaneity, creativity, and joy that come from embracing life's uncertainties. In our efforts to control, we may inadvertently limit our ability to experience life fully. Another aspect of the control paradox is the impact it has on our relationships. In relationships, whether personal or professional, the desire to control can be particularly damaging. If we attempt to control the behavior, thoughts, or emotions of others, we often create tension and conflict. People naturally resist being controlled, and when we try to impose our will upon them, we risk pushing them away. Healthy relationships are built on trust and mutual respect, and control undermines these foundational elements. The paradox here is that by trying to control others to ensure outcomes that align with our desires, we may end up alienating the very people we are trying to influence. On a deeper level, the paradox of control also extends to our relationship with ourselves. The more we try to control our internal state, our thoughts, emotions, and desires, the more we may find ourselves trapped in a cycle of self criticism and dissatisfaction. For example, if we constantly try to suppress negative emotions, we may find that they become stronger and more persistent. By attempting to control our internal experience, we may inadvertently intensify our discomfort, creating a sense of internal conflict and unease. Furthermore, the desire for control often stems from a fear of uncertainty. We fear the unknown, and we believe that if we can control our environment, we can eliminate this uncertainty. However, the paradox is that uncertainty is an inherent part of life, and trying to control everything only amplifies our fear of it. The more we strive for certainty, the more we are confronted with the reality that there is no such thing as absolute control. Life is constantly changing, and no amount of planning can eliminate the inherent unpredictability of existence. The key to resolving the paradox of control lies in learning how to balance control with acceptance. It's important to recognize that there are aspects of life we cannot control, and that's okay. Rather than trying to control every situation, we can focus on developing resilience and adaptability, skills that allow us to navigate uncertainty with confidence. Accepting that we cannot control everything enables us to release the pressure of trying to perfect every aspect of our lives, and it allows us to embrace the natural flow of life. The paradox of progress. Paradox. The more we advance, the more we risk losing what makes us human. In the modern world, progress is often viewed as an unquestionable good. We have made incredible strides in technology, medicine, communication, and many other fields. With each new discovery and innovation, we seem to move closer to a more efficient, connected, and advanced future. However, the paradox of progress suggests that the more we progress, the more we risk losing touch with the fundamental aspects of our humanity. At the heart of this paradox is the idea that human progress, while it can bring enormous benefits, also carries unintended consequences. As we advance technologically and socially, we tend to replace older ways of life with newer, more efficient ones. On the surface, this seems like a positive development: more convenience, better health, and improved quality of life. However, these advancements often come with a cost that is not immediately apparent: an erosion of the very qualities that make us human. One of the primary ways in which progress can erode our humanity is through the increasing reliance on technology. In the past, humans relied on face-to-face interactions, handwritten letters, and physical books. Today, however, much of our communication is mediated by screens, social media, and digital platforms. While these technologies connect us in new ways, they also create distance and detachment. People may feel isolated even though they are constantly connected to others online. The convenience of technology can make us more efficient, but it can also reduce the depth of our relationships and interactions. Moreover, progress often leads to a sense of detachment from the natural world. With the rise of urbanization, industrialization, and digitalization, many people have lost touch with the land, the environment, and the natural rhythms of life. We are more likely to spend our days indoors, working in offices, or interacting with digital devices than to spend time in nature. As we progress, we become more disconnected from the very earth that sustains us, and this disconnect can lead to a sense of alienation and loss of identity. Additionally, the pursuit of progress often comes at the expense of tradition and cultural heritage. As societies modernize, older customs, languages, and ways of life are often discarded or forgotten. While innovation and change are essential for growth, the loss of cultural traditions can leave people with a sense of disconnection from their roots. This loss of cultural identity can be disorienting and can lead to feelings of uncertainty about who we are and where we come from. Another aspect of the paradox of progress is the effect it has on individual well-being. While technological advancements have led to incredible medical breakthroughs and improvements in living standards, they have also created new pressures and expectations. The constant rush to innovate and improve can create an environment of competition and comparison. People may feel that they are always striving to keep up with the latest trends, technologies, or social expectations, leading to stress, anxiety, and burnout. In this sense, progress can inadvertently contribute to a decline in mental and emotional health, as the pursuit of external achievement often overshadows internal well being. In addition, the speed at which progress unfolds can outpace our ability to adapt. While technology is advancing at a rapid pace, many individuals and societies are struggling to keep up with these changes. This can lead to a sense of disorientation or loss of control. For example, In the workforce, automation and artificial intelligence are replacing many jobs, creating anxiety about the future of employment. In education, new technologies are rapidly changing the way we learn, leaving some people behind in an ever shifting landscape. The accelerating pace of progress can cause social inequality, as those who cannot adapt to new technologies or systems are left behind. The paradox is that while progress is essential for improving our quality of life and advancing society, it also carries with it the potential for disconnection and alienation. As we progress, we risk losing sight of what truly makes us human: our relationships with others, our connection to the natural world, and our ability to reflect, create, and find meaning in life. Progress can lead to a future that is more efficient and technologically advanced, but it may also create a world where human beings are increasingly isolated, detached, and disconnected from the things that give life its true richness. The paradox of freedom. Paradox. The more freedom we have, the more we may feel constrained. Freedom is often viewed as one of the highest ideals in human society. It represents the ability to act without restrictions, to make choices, and to live life on one's own terms. It is celebrated in political systems, philosophies, and personal endeavors. Yet, there exists a profound paradox at the heart of freedom. The more freedom we have, the more we may feel burdened or constrained by it. This paradox is counterintuitive. How can freedom, a state of limitless possibility, also bring feelings of constraint or even anxiety? At first glance, it seems that more freedom would lead to greater happiness. If we have the ability to choose our careers, relationships, lifestyles, and beliefs without interference, we should be able to live fulfilling lives. After all, the ability to make choices is often seen as empowering. The freedom to follow our desires, pursue our passions, and live according to our values should, in theory, be the ultimate source of fulfillment. So why does it sometimes feel overwhelming or even oppressive? The paradox of freedom begins to unfold when we consider the psychological effects of having too many choices. The more options we have, the harder it becomes to make decisions. In fact, studies have shown that having an abundance of choices can lead to decision fatigue, stress, and dissatisfaction. When we are faced with endless possibilities, we can become paralyzed by the fear of making the wrong choice. The pressure to choose the best option can create anxiety, as we fear that one wrong move could lead to regret or missed opportunities. Moreover, with greater freedom comes greater responsibility. When we are free to make our own decisions, we are also responsible for the consequences of those decisions. This sense of responsibility can be heavy, especially when the choices we make have far-reaching implications. For instance, in the context of career choices, we may feel immense pressure to choose a path that will bring us success, fulfillment, and financial security. The weight of this responsibility can lead to a sense of being trapped, even though we technically have the freedom to choose whatever we want. Additionally, freedom often brings with it a sense of isolation. In a society that emphasizes individual freedom, there can be a lack of community or shared purpose. When everyone is free to pursue their own interests and goals, it can lead to fragmentation as individuals prioritize personal freedom over collective well-being. This can leave people feeling disconnected, as they may no longer feel a sense of belonging or solidarity with others. Instead of feeling liberated by freedom, they may feel lonely or unanchored in a world that places little value on shared norms or collective goals. Another aspect of the paradox is the conflict between personal freedom and social constraints. While we may have the freedom to act as we wish, we are still bound by societal expectations, laws, and norms. These external forces can impose limits on our actions, regardless of how much personal freedom we might have. For example, while individuals in democratic societies are free to express their opinions, they may still face backlash or social ostracism for holding unpopular views. Similarly, while we are free to pursue careers or lifestyles that align with our passions, economic realities or social pressures may limit our ability to fully embrace those freedoms. Furthermore, freedom can create a sense of existential angst. In the absence of clear direction or purpose, we may struggle to find meaning in our lives. The freedom to choose our path can be liberating, but it can also be disorienting. Without any inherent structure or guidance, the abundance of options can lead to confusion and a lack of direction. This existential uncertainty can make us feel lost as we grapple with the overwhelming weight of choosing our own future. Finally, the paradox of freedom can be seen in the context of personal fulfillment. While freedom allows us to pursue our desires, it can also highlight the emptiness of those desires. If we are free to follow our passions and ambitions, but those pursuits do not bring us lasting satisfaction, we may find ourselves questioning the very nature of freedom. If we are constantly chasing after new experiences or achievements without ever feeling truly fulfilled, we may begin to question whether freedom itself is the answer to life's deeper questions.